This bulletin proudly brought to you in association with Alex Campbell's Menswear.
Tonight on The South Today, the Dunedin City Council's 9 to 5 vote in favour of making George Street one-way is meeting resistance from retailers. Students at the University of Otago have discovered when life leaves you bread, make ginger beer as part of Food Waste Awareness Day. And intergenerational play featured games for all ages recently in Gore. Kia ora, tēnā koutou katoa. Good evening, ko Melissa Barton, aho. The vote this week in favour of turning George Street into a 10-kilometre-an-hour shared space has some central city businesses worried. On Tuesday, Dunedin City Councillors voted for a one-way George Street between Frederick Street and Moray Place, with traffic flowing north to south only.
Tuesday's 9 to 5 vote by Dunedin City Councillors in favour of George Street becoming a 10-kilometre-an-hour one-way street has raised concerns in the city's business community. However, Dunedin Mayor Aaron Hawkins says one of the city's significant business stakeholders is supportive.
And certainly there is a spectrum of opinion within the local business community. Some are quite vocal and opposed, and that is understandable. Change is scary and people are anxious, particularly in the current business environment. But equally there's been feedback from businesses who are supportive, including the chair of the Chamber of Commerce's retail subcommittee, who supported eventually the one-way southbound option. Now, if this was inherently bad for business and bad for retail, then I can't see how he would have come to that conclusion.
Dunedin City Councillor Jules Raddick has been one of the more vocal opponents of the idea, describing partial pedestrianisation as an outdated experiment.
And so there are many city centres around the world that are moving back from pedestrianisation. It was quite a trendy thing to do in the 70s, 80s, even 90s, pedestrianisation of city centres, and many have moved back. We only have to look at Christchurch to see how barren the square became once they took cars out and the shops all departed. And the shops are not departing because they don't like the barrenness, they're departing because there's no people there.
Businesses in Dunedin's CBD are concerned the scheme will reduce the ease in which people can get to the areas and believe it'll negatively impact on their businesses.
I think they should have left it as it is. I think that the businesses will fall away because of, well, people can't get to the shops. I mean, it's all fine and good. Having the one way is better than having it completely pedestrianised. I think for the shops to be able to carry on, they're going to have to, for the customers to be able to come to the shops, they're going to have to be able to get to the shops, and the only way they're going to get there now is to park.
One street over from George Street, Greg Lapwood of Smith's Sports Shoes really feels for the retailers who'll be impacted. First by the construction work, and then by the projected drop in the amount of foot traffic.
I mean, you know, for the retailers in George Street, I just hope that they didn't get treated like I do, and you know, the ORC wasn't particularly forthcoming with information and kept me in the dark a bit. And you know, obviously the whole project was a bit of a disaster cost-wise and time-wise, and the amount of money that was wasted by doing some of the works 2 or 3 times. I would hope that the DCC are going to be more onto it than what the ORC was, and maybe the good thing is that it's a different construction company and a different design company, so maybe hopefully things are better. But
the projected budget for the work to replace the ageing drainage system along George Street and then change the street's layout is said to be around $60 million. The council estimates the road to be operating from early 2024. In Dunedin, The South Today.
The woman who attempted to cover up her son's involvement in a murder 2 years ago was sentenced in the Invercargill High Court today. Patricia Sampson was sentenced to 9 months home detention for her part in her son's murder of his partner at the Bavarian Motel in Invercargill. The Crown said she had discarded items in the Oreti River, which tied her son to the murder. Her son, Sampson, was sentenced to life imprisonment in June for the murder of 22-year-old Azalea Wilson. The couple had a baby girl who was born in 2019. The 2-year-old girl is now being raised by family members. Students passing through the University of Otago campus were invited to try a refreshing glass of ginger beer brewed from leftover bread. The drink stall was run by the Department of Food Science as part of International Food Waste Awareness Day and Fun.
Bread is one of the most wasted food products in New Zealand, with much of it being thrown away before it even reaches its use-by date. But yesterday, Dr. Graham Ayres of the University of Otago's Department of Food Science demonstrated how to make a delicious, non-alcoholic ginger beer by extracting the starch and carbohydrate from leftover bread.
This is an example. The syrup that we make from extracting the starch, carbohydrate from the bread, converting it into sugars, that could be used for a whole host of applications, from other beverages into cereal products, smoothies, anything where you might have need a sugar replacer.
And the flavour base for the free ginger beer that passing students were invited to taste came largely from citrus fruit that would otherwise have gone to waste.
A kilo of ginger, so that's the base flavour, along with the sugar coming from the bread. We've also flavoured it with some spices, some coriander seed, and then on top of that, to give it some really extra zing, we got some rescued citrus fruit, lemons and oranges, that were just starting to go a bit mouldy, but still really good. We've trimmed those off and we've juiced that, zested that, and we've made a syrup that we've added to flavour up the ginger beer, give it a really citrus zing.
Tying in with International Food Waste Awareness Day, the display on the university's Union lawn was part of a larger theme of academic research in how to avoid food waste.
We are particularly interested in highlighting the climate impact of food waste. So it's estimated that over a third of all food produced globally is wasted, which is a phenomenal amount of food. And obviously that has different implications. It's really bad socially when we've got hungry people. We know over one in five Kiwis are, don't have enough food to eat. It's bad for our wallets in terms of spending money on food that could have been wasted, and it's actually really, really bad for the environment as well.
The day also included displays which demonstrated facts such as the amount of energy an average person wastes by throwing away food each year is the same as it would take to power all these fridges. In Dunedin, the South Today.
It's lucky no one was seriously injured in a two-vehicle crash at the corner of Midland and Timaru Streets in Dunedin yesterday. Contractors were called to cut off power to an electrical supply box after a vehicle ended up on it late yesterday. Police say a two-car accident happened about 5 p.m, with Fire and Emergency New Zealand, Police and St John all attending the scene. The white Suzuki Swift received considerable damage to the driver's door. No significant injuries were reported. East Gore is one of 4 communities across New Zealand chosen to trial a new scheme to encourage play across all generations. At the moment, it is unclear what the end result will look like because it will be up to the community to decide what is the best fit for them.
The community of East Gore is just one of 4 neighbourhoods selected from across the country to try out a new community play initiative.
The play initiative is about bringing play into our community. So we're a pretty tight-knit community over here in East Gore, pretty unique with the river running through the middle of town, so that separates us from the rest of Gore, and it's all about introducing or bringing play back into our community. That's beyond playgrounds, into getting more active around our community.
Those behind the scheme say they don't know what the end result will look like because it's up to the community to help design the environment where play can be an everyday activity for the whole family.
We want the whole community to be a part of this initiative. We don't want to direct it, we don't want to tell our community what we want to have happening out there. We want the community to tell us that this is what they would like to see in our green spaces that the council already have, or as they're moving around our community.
The initiative is being backed by Active Southland and is supported by the Gore District Council and Sport New Zealand. In East Gore, the South Today.
Still to come on the South Today, an outspoken Otago Regional Councillor is told to withdraw her comments or leave the council. And we have this week's edition of Global Insight with International Affairs Specialist Professor Robert Patman. So see you after the break.
If you're at risk of developing melanoma skin cancer, you owe it to yourself to have a mole map. Mole map is coming to your area. Phone today to make an appointment. It could save your life.
Prices are down for the count this weekend at John's Furniture Warehouse and pay it off over 18 months interest-free.
And my mate John.
A poorly maintained heat pump can lose up to 35% of its output. The Mr. Heat Pump Cleaner team are experts. Their specially developed chemical wash is totally biodegradable. Call Mr. Heat Pump Cleaner and get the job done by the professionals.
Every reason, every season, we're proud to dress the region. Alex Campbell Menswear, it fits.
Your love lifting me higher than I've ever been lifted before. So keep it up, keep on lifting.
Hi, my name's Matt and I'm the Dines Group CEO. Dines is a company that's focused on selling logistics solutions to its customers. We're passionate about selling efficiency and we've been selling efficiency for over 50 years now.
Welcome back. Otago Regional Council Deputy Chairman Michael Laws says outspoken councillor Marina Hobbs should either withdraw her comments or leave the council as promised. Following a contentious decision around freshwater last month, Hobbs said she would step down if government commissioners did not take over council affairs. Councillors heard from Environment Minister David Parker yesterday, and there had been no threat to sack councillors. Laws says Hobbs should either put up or shut up. Hobbs has responded by saying the issue of sacking the councillors has not been resolved and remains on the table. In today's Global Insight, Professor Robert Patman discusses Greta Thunberg's recent criticism of Jacinda Ardern and New Zealand's apparent lack of efforts to halt climate change. The international affairs commentator says with abundant hydro and wind power possibilities, this country is actually well situated to become a leading example of a green economy.
4 weeks ahead of an important global gathering on climate change, New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern has been called out for not walking the talk. Welcome, Robert.
Morena, Bruce.
This criticism came from teenage climate activist Greta Thunberg. Why did she single out Ardern?
I don't think she did single out Jacinda Ardern. She was asked a question by the journalists about leadership on this question, and she repeated this in a subsequent speech, a youth leadership speech in Milan. She said that all global leaders were failing. And I think she was then prompted to say even Jacinda Ardern, and she said yes, Jacinda Ardern. And to be fair, the Ardern government has committed the electrical national grid to be powered by renewable energy only by 2035, and there's been other measures as well. So compared with previous governments, this government has been, I think, trying to use an analogy, turn the supertanker around. And so far it hasn't generated much results, but as climate scientist James Renwick at Victoria University has noted, a lot of good measures have been put in place which have the potential to generate substantive results. So I think the criticism based on the record is accurate, but you could say in Jacinda Ardern government's defence that it recognises there's been a lack of action since 1990 and is now trying to address the problem. It's just the results haven't yet been generated.
So will this criticism, because Jacinda Ardern was named,
yeah,
will this have any consequences for her?
No, well, it could do. I think it will probably reinforce Jacinda Ardern's conviction that New Zealand needs to be a fast follower, even a leader in this area. And compared with Australia, we've been much more proactive. And Australia has shown no signs of really moving away from a commitment to fossil fuels. In contrast, one of the controversial things this government did was to put a suspension on gas and oil exploration companies which wanted to be active in New Zealand. And that was noted, and that was met with some criticism by people here who feared that such a measure would compromise standards. So I think, if anything, the criticism by Thunberg will probably reinforce Jacinda Ardern's conviction that we have to move as quickly as we can. And of course, she needs to carry public opinion here. It was an interesting observation, Bruce, recently by Jacinda Ardern, who said that when she first came into the New Zealand Parliament, and I think that was around 2008, 2009, many MPs were in complete denial there was such a thing as climate change. She said that the debate has progressed sufficiently within New Zealand where people now don't disagree on whether there's climate change, but they disagree often how to treat the problem, which is a major shift. And you know, I think in that sense, Thunberg's criticism will probably act as an incentive for Ardern to generate some results, and her ministers, to generate some results from the measures they've taken.
We've talked here on Global Insight before about Ardern's international profile rising.
Yeah.
You're saying that you don't believe that the criticism is particularly justified, but for a lot of people who don't know the detail, they're just going to hear Thunberg making these comments.
Yeah.
Do you think it'll have any implications for Ardern's profile as an international leader?
Not if she can show that she's not just talking, but she's walking the talk. And the other thing here is that Greta Thunberg said a lot less flattering things about other leaders, particularly singled out Boris Johnson for criticism. Mr. Johnson recently addressed the UN General Assembly in New York and said it's easy to be green, and critics then pointed out, well, why did he spend much of his political career in the climate change denial camp until he became Prime Minister in 2019? So, yeah, I mean, I think the difference between Jacinda Ardern and some of the other leaders is that Jacinda Ardern has not just discovered climate change after being in power. It's something that's been with her since she's entered politics in this country. But there's no doubt about it, we as a country need to do more. And of course, one of the biggest generators of carbon emissions in this country is agriculture. Helen Clark tried to do something about methane emissions from the digestive systems of cows. We've got 6.3 million cows in this country, and that's one of the major contributors to it. But when Helen Clark tried to introduce a methane reduction measure, a so-called fart tax, that met with immediate and widespread protest from the farming community, and effectively the government backed down in the face of that resistance. But I think now public opinion and within the farming sector has moved as well. So I think we are seeing some pretty big shifts, but it certainly seems to me that there's a lot more that we can do. And as James Renwick has pointed out, we do have the potential, if we can follow through with the measures that this government has put in place, to become one of the leading countries in the world for establishing a green economy. We have lots of things going for us in terms of our access to renewable energy, for example, through the many lakes and rivers we have in this country. But we do need leadership.
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching. Catch us next time on Global Insight. Ka kite anō.
And you can watch the full interview with Professor Patman online at odt.co.nz. Still to come on the South today, the New Zealand Sports Hall of Fame still faces an uncertain future in Dunedin. And we take a look at tomorrow's weather for you, so see you after the break.
Every season, we're proud to dress the region. Alex Campbell Menswear, it fits.
This weekend at John's Furniture Warehouse. Save 20% on TV units and buffets. And a whopping 30% off Comet and Alto mattresses, all sizes. Plus tons more in store. And pay it off over 18 months interest-free. Only at John's Furniture Warehouse, Stafford Street, and online at mymatejohn.co.nz.
Furniture from Stafford Street and my mate John.
If you're at risk of developing melanoma skin cancer, you owe it to yourself to have a mole map. Mole map is coming to your area. Phone today to make an appointment. It could save your life.
A poorly maintained heat pump can lose up to 35% of its output. The Mr. Heat Pump Cleaner team are experts. Their specially developed chemical wash is totally biodegradable. Call Mr. Heat Pump Cleaner and get the job done by the professionals.
Thanks for staying with us. The chairman of the New Zealand Sports Hall of Fame says the City Council's resolutions will do very little to help the beleaguered attraction in Dunedin. At a meeting yesterday, Dunedin City councillors were united in their desire to keep the museum in the city. But earlier this month, the council voted unanimously not to express interest in continuing to host the Hall of Fame at a council facility. Hall of Fame Chairman Stuart McLaughlin now says his focus is now on proposals to home the museum elsewhere. And now recapping tonight's top stories on the South today. The Dunedin City Council's 9-5 vote in favour of making George Street one-way is meeting resistance from retailers in the CBD. Students at the University of Otago have discovered when life leaves you bread, make ginger beer. An intergenerational play featured games for all ages recently in Gore as the town trials a new play initiative. And now look at what's happening in tomorrow's ODT. Welcome, Mr. Barry Stewart. What have you got for us?
Hello, Mel. Well, a number of good stories. Aged care sector in the south is in crisis, with almost 2/3 not having the required number of registered nurses. So an ongoing debate about that. George Street, how can we ignore George Street? Well, the architect behind the changes responds to criticisms levelled at the plan, and he details to us where to next. So interesting story there. And you can also catch the results of the Otago Daily Times poll on that subject. We'll have the results of that tomorrow's. Kim Dungy has a look at a stunning house at St Clair overlooking the beach. So she goes inside that and gives you all the details.
Wonderful. So you can catch all of that in tomorrow's ODT. And now it's time for a look at the weather.
Tonight's weather proudly brought to you by Mole Map.
Starting with today's southern view, daffodils on a central city traffic island. Looking at the situation, cool southwesterly airflow will ease tomorrow and die out on Saturday, with a switch to milder northerly airflow on the way from Sunday onwards, bringing a fine weekend to most in the region. Looking at the northwest of the South Island, a wet start to the day in both centres. Westport has showers with a high of 13 degrees and Greymouth the same with 14. Moving to the northeast, it's a sunny day for all in this region with 17 degrees in Blenheim and Nelson with a bit of cloud for... Moving down to Canterbury, the sunny weather continues with 13 degrees for Kaikoura, 15 degrees in Christchurch and Ashburton, 17. Looking at what's in store for the southern towns, the Catlins, Balclutha, Lumsden and Gore all can expect moderate southwesterlies and 13 degrees. Travelling westwards to the Central Lakes, Wanaka, Queenstown and Alexandra are looking at fine weather with light to moderate southwesterlies. Wanaka and Alexandra 15 degrees, Queenstown 14 and Tiana a high of 13. Looking at the northern towns, the fine weather continues here. Along the coast, Timaru has light winds with a high of 15 degrees. Oamaru can expect moderate southwesterlies, cloud and 14. Further inland, Twizel and Marama, light southwesterlies and 15 degrees for you both. And in Dunedin, cloudy tonight with a low of 6 degrees. Mostly fine tomorrow and Saturday with sunny periods, some cloud and moderate west to southwesterlies. Tomorrow sees a high of 14 and an overnight low of 5, and it's the same for Saturday, 14 and a low of 5. And in Invercargill, cloudy tonight with a low of 5. Fine tomorrow with sunny periods, some cloud and cold southwesterlies decreasing throughout the day, a high of 12 and a low of 4. And it's mostly fine and sunny on Saturday with mild winds, looking at a high of 15 and a low of 4. That's all for our news for this Thursday. For the latest news from the southern region, head online to odt.co.nz. Ka kite anō.
This bulletin proudly brought to you in association with Alex Campbell's Menswear.
Supporting local content so you can see more of New Zealand on air.